Record. And welcome, ladies. So I'll hand it over to Paula, or is it Fern that's going to start this afternoon?
Yes, it's Fern. It's Fern who's starting.
So one of the questions that we were asked about was, why did we decide to write this book? And I think the book sort of had a natural evolution. I know in my role as a speech language pathologist working in the TDSB, when I go around and provide consultation to different teachers around their students with special needs, I've had the opportunity to share my knowledge, my experience to help that child in the classroom. But along the way, I've actually learned a lot from the teachers that I've worked with. So I've benefited from their powerful practices, and certainly I've had the opportunity to work with fabulous colleagues, Stephaney, Paula, and actually many Ergo members also sharing their powerful practices with me. And so it seemed like a natural evolution to kind of put everything together and to work with colleagues to be able to share what we've learned and what we continue to learn in a book that others might be able to use as well. The book actually has three strong overlying perspectives. So it's an interprofessional book. So we have, we figured out between the three of us, we have over 100 years of combined experience in education and speech language pathology. It's also a transnational book. So we're trying to get the best of the best from both the American perspective and the Canadian perspective. And we're doing this with an asset-based lens. So we're looking at what students bring with them, how we can maximize and elevate their assets, but also the assets that our educators and the people working with these students bring with them. The book is organized along an English learner interconnected ecosystem model, which recognizes that the school, the community, the classroom, the family, the student all work together in order to support students. And so each one of those components is one chapter, is its own chapter. And each chapter is based on a repeated pattern. So we talk about what we know. So the research and the rationale for bringing in home languages and cultures into the classroom, why it's important. And then we go on, we ask some questions, because knowledge doesn't just stop with what we know, it continues to grow. And so we look at what it might look like. So we've taken examples, we've described vignettes, we've got lesson plans, different way to try to bring that research to light and make it more visible to the reader. And then we provide the opportunity to make it your own. So we provide some questions or further readings or other resources so that everybody has the opportunity to personalize that information in a way that's going to fit your context best of all.
Thanks, Fern. And so another question that we were asked had to do with, for whom is this book intended? And this is interesting just because, Christine, as we were speaking at the beginning, you mentioned how many people have multiple portfolios on their plates, which I thought was an elegant way to put that we're all being asked to do more with various other roles. And so that's really in line with our intention and experience. We know that we need to address not only administrators, but also K-12 classroom teachers, ESL board leads, pre-service teachers at universities still learning about English learners, in-service teachers, certainly speech language pathologists, counselors, social workers, special education consultants, paraprofessionals, I think that among us, we could generate a whole additional cadre of folks that this information will benefit, because we all benefit when we have similar background information. And a lot of times in my personal experience, the ideal world isn't the case. We're a lot more siloed and independently trying to have an impact on language learners. So definitely it is for multiple audience. And in light of that, we were also asked, how could each of our audiences quickly access the learning? Well, in an ideal world, everybody would start at the starting line and we'd all have a certain background already built, right? We know from our personal experience, and as Christine was just sharing, there are a lot of new people who may not have that basic starting information that we'd all like to have under our belts. So again, in the ideal world, we would suggest that every chapter is for every team member who's supporting language learners from every discipline. And again, ideally, learning about language acquisition, cultural considerations, English learner specific data, absolutely everything could be common understanding and move from there. So stakeholders, all of them, could share in the basic features of the book, including the what we know, where we start each chapter with the research, as Fern was mentioning, in the examples, templates, cultural insights, various examples, figures that are able to be adapted and applied immediately, or totally revamped and used yourselves in your context. And finally, the third component of implementing the supports, the powerful practices, which is the making it your own aspect, comprise a body of information that really is cohesive and ideally could be approached by an entire team in professional development. Now, having said that, can one locate quick answers to specific questions? Yes, let me get to that too, which is at the beginning, at the outset, it really behooves one to spend a few minutes reading the introduction. That lays out clearly how best the book is laid out in a repetitive format for each chapter, which makes it easy to access some of those questions. And at the beginning, again, in the introduction on page 6, we have a list of all of the questions, all the overarching questions, organizational questions that are contained in each chapter. So we can see where is our interest, what do we want to read about, and you can access it that way. Those are a couple of ways to access the information. And so my next question to respond to briefly is, what are some good ways to use the book? So I think that one good way, and there are unlimited ways, as all of you know, to use a good book, is in a book study format where we can have the value of engaging in the questions and the reflecting and the brainstorming with people on our teams from other disciplines, particularly as it relates to our specific contexts. In the book study approach, it's possible to start with best practices that are examples given by the authors, and then most importantly, to add powerful practices that the participants themselves have also experienced for discussion, and which ones did they have most success with and they felt most proud of, and we need to validate, and we do recognize that our teachers are our best experts, right, as we know. So this is the collective background building where the newbies can learn from the people who've been doing this for a while and continue to learn from each other. Another important way to use the book is to ensure that the participants actually access and try out the many websites, resources, online references, templates, samples that are curated within each chapter. And really, I can't list all of them at this point, but a sampling of just a couple, I will tell you what's in there, include a brief framework called the 4-tiered model for professional development, for designing professional development rooted in empathy and understanding. On page 22, there's a checklist of actions for creating a culturally responsive ethos throughout the school. There is on page 30 a list of recommended books about refugee and immigrant experiences in particular. There's a brief instructional reading inventory on page 90 to help inform and design reading instruction in English for English learners. There is a list of resources to support teachers become trauma-informed educators. There's a list of resources to support educators responding to safety issues for students with a variety of immigration needs. And finally, there's a collection of multicultural, multilingual websites that provide access to stories for English learners and families in particular. So those are a few of the ways to make some good use of the book. And I think I will yield to Paula at this moment.
Okay, thank you, Fern. Thank you, Stephaney. The question that I'm going to briefly respond to is, how can this book help support educators in the current educational environment for multilinguals and their families in Ontario schools? And first of all, one thing that I want to mention is that this book really contains all of the best practices for supporting multilingual students and their families that we here in Ontario believe in. So it's very much aligned and in tune to the track that we are on in supporting English learners and their families here in the province. First of all, as Fern mentioned in her introduction, everything in this book is coming from an asset-based perspective, which is something that here in Ontario, we always keep foremost in our minds, both towards our English language learners and towards their parent guardians, their families, and their communities. So everything that you will see in the book vis-a-vis all of those stakeholders is very much coming with an asset-based lens. You will find a lot about culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy, both in the school, in the classroom, and in our professional interactions with the wider community. And we survey from both sides of the border, both in the United States and Canada, all kinds of different professional practices having to do with everything from physical attributes of the school to resources, both technology and hardcover, to curriculum, to the hiring of staff, everything that educators can do with lots of vivid examples to really embody the notion of culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. We also present something that's fairly new. I don't know how many people yet are familiar with this, and that is the language-friendly school roadmap that's coming to us now from a consortium of educators in Europe. Someone at OISE by the name of Emmanuel Le Pichon-Vorstman is one of the initiators of the language-friendly roadmap, and they very kindly gave us permission to include this in a book. So we think that that's something new that maybe some people haven't seen before, again, under the umbrella of how do we create a culturally responsive and relevant environment in our schools. We look at initial assessment and reception. We look at benchmarking schemes for tracking English learners' progress. We mentioned STEP in the resource, as well as the Alberta ESL benchmarks and the WIDA system that is very widely used in the United States. We present a lot of wonderful examples of identity text creation and multimodal and multilingual project work from, again, a wide variety of educators from both Canada and the US. And we also look with great depth at supporting multilingual families and communities. We have a whole big chapter on that. And not just supporting them, but moving further to collaborating with them for the success both of their children, of the parents themselves, and of their wider community, in everything as well in helping them to encourage the growth and development of home languages. And that's something that we really believe in Ontario too. So you'll find a lot in the book about that. Finally, I just want to mention that in Ontario, as you know, all of us in our different boards support a wide variety of English language learners and multilingual students who come to us from such a multiplicity of contexts and backgrounds. We've got immigrant students, we've got refugee students, we've got fee-paying international students. We've got students who come to us who are what we might call undocumented. They're here without the paperwork that may be required. We have unaccompanied refugee minors, you know, those kids who are 15, 16, 17, who have had to leave their countries and come to us, and they're not with their families. And we also have many multilingual students from all those different backgrounds who, in addition to needing to learn English as the language of instruction, also have, may have special education needs. So for all of those different groups, there are chapters in this book that will present to you a survey of research, what other jurisdictions are doing. And again, as both Fern and Stephaney have mentioned, in our questions and activities, a way for you to then take this knowledge, reflect upon it, and build upon it to suit the needs of your own school and your own board. We think that there really is a lot for educators in Ontario to take from this book. Thank you.
I think so, Paula. I think it's got lots of connections. And like you said, I think it's so important that we can work towards moving out of silos and departments and work collaboratively with the expertise of the people in each department to support the students. And so that even your title and then the examples from schools really guide all educators and stakeholders towards that goal. I think that's a nice layout and a nice way to see it instead of just to focus on the ESLs, ELD teachers owning all of that responsibility. Yeah. Thanks for the summary. We have Carrie here. Carrie Mage is one of the other co-chairs at Ergo, has joined us also. And I can see other teachers from Ontario here with us right now. There was a question in the chat about whether you touch upon the initial assessment and the ongoing assessment, which are best to use to determine step levels.
We don't go into particular benchmarking systems, as I'll call it. We present STEP, we talk about the Alberta ESL benchmarks, we talk about WIDA, we present some research which looks at some of the different characteristics, but we don't go into the nitty-gritty of which assessments to use. Okay. That's something that has a layer of specificity that we didn't approach.
Right. Okay. And someone, Barbara's saying she's excited about the Ontario content, all the Ontario content and the name we recognize from Ergo and then possibly from school boards that we actually work at. So that's a nice piece to recognize in the resources that we don't often see in resources that we access in Ontario. So yeah, we look forward to reading some more about what Ontario teachers are doing and then what other teachers in other areas are also doing that are, you know, best practice in supporting this large group of students.
If I can mention just for a moment, first of all, thank you to all Ergo members and boards for sharing with me over the last 25 years. I learned so much from everybody, and it was just such an honor to be able to incorporate some Ontario amazing things that are going on. But I just want to say also, I really never expected to have an attendee here from Manitoba. Diana Turner is here, and everybody should know that we have also highlighted some of the great resources supporting refugee learners that have come out of Manitoba. So they will get a wider audience, hopefully. And also the work of Dr. Jan Stewart from the University.
Good. Great. I will be mentioning this title as soon as we get off today.
And there are some things from Alberta in it.
Yes, some good things out of there.
There's so much going on. You just wish that you had more time and opportunity to visit more classes.
Oh yeah.
That include more things. But you definitely will find a lot of things from Ergo board members, and Ergo as a whole should be very proud to know that the Making Good Choices series is highlighted in the, as is the Live Well series. So, and Ergo is even in the table, the index.
That's awesome. That's great. We look forward to reading more about that and learning more about what's happening in other provinces in Ontario and even south of the border here to again learn the best practices. Is there any other questions from anyone that's here today?
Oh, look at Carrie.
Thank you, Carrie.
No, that's great. And hopefully the people that weren't able to join us today will post this, and then people can learn more about the resource. And summer's coming, so lots of reading for teachers to do in the next few months. But yes, if there's no more questions from the crowd, I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon, and especially for Fern and Stephaney and Paula to make time in their schedule to share more about the book that they've just released, and hopefully we'll get it into the hands of teachers in the upcoming months.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for supporting us.
Of course, thank you for.
I'm looking forward to seeing this.
Yes, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your expertise and all of that with other teachers, and especially people who are new to these roles and new to supporting multilinguals in our schools.
And you